Well, thanks for joining me for the Sunday school lesson. We're still in the book of Judges. We come to the last judge. Remember, there are 12 judges in the book. In the book of Judges, there are 12 judges, 6 minor and 6 major. And we're coming to the last of the judges, the major judge, Samson. And we'll have 2 lessons on Samson. We could take longer than that on Samson. He's quite a character. He is such a lovable individual on one hand, and on the other hand, he can be a tyrant. He's just one of those characters. So we'll look at him today. We'll look at the conflict in his life. He goes to Timnah, and there he starts finding himself. It's one of the longest narratives on the birth that you're going to find in the Bible. There are not many narratives on births. One writer said there were only 7 in all of the Scripture. I didn't take time to check that out, but I thought through some of them, and most of them I could name. The narrative of the birth of Christ, the narrative of the birth of John the Baptist, the narrative of the birth of Moses, the narrative of the birth of Isaac and Jacob. Those are the ones that came to my mind, and that's probably about 5 out of the 7. I'd have to look up the others and see. But these unusual births, and it takes time to give them. And when they have a long narrative about the birth, you just know they're going to have a longer narrative about the life. It happens every time. It's seen in the life of John the Baptist. He comes suddenly out of nowhere, comes out of the desert, preaching, baptizing, getting in trouble, going to jail. You just know something's going to happen that is going to be highly significant when there are these lengthy records of the birth of the individual. And the same is so with Samson. So if you'd like to turn in your Bibles, turn with me, please, to chapter 13, Judges chapter 13, and we'll begin in verse 1 and narratively go through, hopefully, chapter 15. And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines 40 years. Now, this is going to be the longest time that they've ever been in captivity to anyone. 40 years they were captive to the Philistines. There was a certain man of Zorah, of the family of the Danites, the tribe of Dan, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren, and she did not bear a child. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto them, and said unto her, Behold, thou art barren, you bear not, but thou shalt conceive and bear a son. And therewith I pray thee, drink not wine nor strong drink, or eat any unclean thing. For lo, thou shalt conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come to his head, and the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. Now that's the introduction to the life, the birth of this man Samson, and what's going to happen. Now, one of the most unusual things about this passage and the passage that's going to follow, Israel up to this time has followed a pattern. And the pattern has been they have done evil in the sight of God. And then God sells them. That's the word that Scripture uses. He places them in the captivity of another nation. This happens to be the nation of the Philistines that they are in captivity to. A hurtful, evil kind of people, the Philistines. And here is Samson. And then they realize that they're in captivity. They get tired of the captivity. And then they cry out to God. And God delivers them. Well, in this case, I can find nothing about the crying out. God seems to be taking the initiative to deliver them from the hand of the Philistines by sending an angel of the Lord to them. Now, you remember the birth of Jesus. It was the angel of the Lord that came to Mary, and then he came to Joseph. Angel of the Lord came to Zechariah when the birth of John the Baptist. Angel of the Lord came to Sarah in the birth of John the Baptist. The angel of the Lord came to Abraham in the birth of Isaac, gave him that horrible assignment to take your son. I want you to sacrifice your son to me. Of course, God never allowed that sacrifice to happen, but it was an unusual thing, these births, how the angel of the Lord came and spoke to them. So this is a different way that God's going to deliver the nation of Israel, this time from the hands of the Philistines. It's going to be through a person that he designs and gives the angel the privilege of telling this woman who has been barren, you're going to have a son. Now, Mary is the only one who could say, I don't know how I could have a son. I've never known a man. All of the others understood exactly what he was talking about, and Mary understood what he was talking about. She just could not imagine in her own mind. She didn't have the skill to know of the virgin birth that was going to come to her. And finally, she got comfortable with it, and she understood that she was going to be the favored one of God, and that Jesus would come through her womb and come into the world. So here's Mary, and here are these others who are simply giving birth to children that God has set aside for a special purpose. So this is true of Samson. This tells you something of the family, apparently a very godly family. He says, drink no strong drink. He's going to be a Nazarite. Now, a Nazarite had a number of vows. You can go back to Leviticus, I believe is the book. You go back to Leviticus and you can read the vows of the Nazarites. They were very strict people. No strong drink, never shave their head. Now, keep that in mind, because I'll remind you more than once. The strength of Samson was not in his hair. The strength of Samson was in his vow as a Nazarite. And when he broke that vow, that's when he became vulnerable to the Philistines. It was not his hair. It was the vow that was broken that he had promised God. And so here is this young woman going to have a child, and she's been barren. And the woman came to her husband and told him, a man of God came to me, and his countenance was like, verse 6, by the way, chapter 13, verse 6. Then the woman came and told her husband, a man came to me, and his countenance was like the countenance of an angel of God. Very terrible, frightening, she would say. But I asked him not whence he was, neither told me his name. But he said unto me, behold, thou shalt conceive and bear a son. Now drink no wine, nor strong drink, neither eat anything unclean. Keep that in mind. That was part of the vow of Nazarite. Eat nothing unclean. Touch nothing that is dead. Don't touch dead bodies. Don't touch dead whatever. That's part of the vow of the Nazarene. Think, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb until his death. And then Manoah entreated the Lord and said, O my God, let the man of God which thou didst send come unto us again, and teach us what we shall do unto the child that shall be born. And God hearkened to the voice of Manoah. God listened to what he had to say. And the angel of God came again, the woman as she sat in the field, but Manoah, her husband, was not with her. And she made haste, showed her husband, and said unto him, behold, the man hath appeared unto me that came unto me the other day. And Manoah arose and went after his wife, and came to the man. Art thou the man that speaks to my wife? He said, Yes, I am. Manoah said, Now let thy words come to pass. How shall we order the child, and how shall we do unto him? And the angel of the Lord said unto Manoah, Of all that I have said unto thee, let the woman beware. She may not eat anything, drink of the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, or eat any unclean thing. All that I command you, let her observe. And Manoah said unto the angel of the Lord, I pray thee, Let us detain thee while I shall make a kid. And he does the thing of sacrifice. And his wife conceives, and she brings forth a child. And they name the child. And as he grows, becomes this great strength, he comes to understand that he has responsibility to God. Now, she bare a son, verse 24 of chapter 13. She bears a son, and she calls his name Samson. And the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. Now, you might want to underline those words. The child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move him at time in the camp of Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol. Samson went down to Timnah. Now here's where the interesting story begins. Suddenly he's no longer a baby. Suddenly he's no longer just a young kid. He has grown up and now is getting ready to go out on his own. He probably knows by this time that he is a Nazirite, which means he has been given over to God from the very beginning of his birth. And there are things that Nazirites do not do. He understands that. Apparently, he understands that about himself. Now, the great strength that comes upon him does not necessarily come upon every Nazirite. But now remember, he comes for one reason. And one reason is he is going to deliver them from the hands of the Philistines. Now, one of the interesting things that we're going to find as we read through and the narrative begins to take place about his life as he kills 1,000 men with the jawbone of a donkey. You can't even allow my head to get big enough to get around that. 1,000 men with the jawbone. Now, I don't think that's figuratively. I think he actually, by the divine strength and power of God, killed 1,000 men. And as a result, they knew of the strength of Samson in the country of the Philistines and how strong he was. So now he goes down to Timnah and he sees a woman of the daughters of the Philistines. The interesting thing, and his mother's going to ask, or his father's going to ask him the question, do you mean there's no one in Israel? there's no one else? You simply want to marry a Philistine rather than to marry one of your own company? And he seemed very set on that because that's the pattern that's going to take his life eventually. He marries this Philistine woman. So he sees this woman. He tells his father and mother. Verse 2, chapter 14, tells his mother and father, I have seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Get her for me to be my wife. His father and mother said unto him, Is there not a woman among the daughters of thy brethren, among all the people, that thou goest to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? Samson said unto his father, Get her for me, for she pleases me well. And his father and his mother knew not that it was of the Lord that he sought the occasion against the Philistines, for at that time the Philistines had domination over Israel. And went Simon down and his father and mother to Timnah, and came to the vineyards of Timnah. Behold, a young lion roared against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. Now, if you're an underliner, you ought to underline that statement. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him, because later on he's going to tell us he did not know that the Spirit of the Lord had left him. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him to give him this strength and understanding. So he takes on the lion with his bare hands, and he kills the young lion with his bare hands. And this word has to get out. You can't keep something like this silent. Now get the story. Here is Samson. He's now grown into the manhood enough that he wants to take a wife. So he goes to his mother and father and says, I've been to Timnah, and I have found a woman there that I love. Now, I don't know how you can know that quickly, but it seems like Samson did. And I want her to be my wife. They ask him the question, then they go down with him to find this woman. As they are on their way to find the woman, now I don't know how this plays into the whole story. I don't know how the young lion plays into the whole story at this point, but you'll see it later on that it does play into the life of the Nazarite. And so he takes the young lion and kills the lion and leaves the carcass, as you should. But he should never go back to touch the dead carcass. That was a no-no in the vows of the Nazarites. Samson must have understood that and must have just not really cared, or else he was so hungry when he comes back by and finds the honey. Someone said it well. When he took the honey out of the carcass of the young lion later on, he didn't get stung by the bees. He got stung by the honey. He should never have gone back. He should never have touched the dead carcass. But nonetheless, we'll see that as it comes alive in the story. Here's Samson. Now he's going down to take a wife. And he finds this woman that he wants to be his wife. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him in verse 6. And he killed the lion like he was killing a kid, a young kid, goat, sheep, and nothing in his hand. And he told his father and mother what he had done. And he went down and talked to the woman, and she pleased Samson. And after a time, he returned to take her. And he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. And he took therefore in his hands and went on eating, and came to his father and mother, and gave to them, and they did eat. But he did not tell them where he had taken the honey from the carcass of the lion. Now you remember the vow of the Nazarite: touch nothing that's unclean, nothing that's dead. Well, he does more than that. Not only does he only touch the carcass of the lion, he gets the honey out of the carcass of the lion. Now, I don't know how all of that figures into the story, other than it's going to reveal the tremendous strength that this man Samson has, the tremendous influence that he is capable of having. And here is the influence that he has. He takes a young lion, kills it like it was a little lamb or a little goat. So here's Samson. And Samson said unto them, he somehow wants to do this riddle. He went down to the woman, made there a feast, and used the young man to do so. And it came to pass, when they saw him, that they brought him 30 champions to be with him. And he puts forth a riddle. And you can read about all of that. It goes on down through verse 16. She cries because she does not know the riddle. He finally lets her in on the riddle. She tells the young men what the riddle means. And as a result, everybody is happily ever after. And the Spirit of the Lord, verse 19, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he went down to Ascalon, slew 30 men of them, and took their spoil, and gave a change of garments to them which expounded the riddle. And his anger was kindled, and he went up to his father's house. And Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he had used as his friend. Now, that's an interesting statement. You and I don't understand some of what goes on, apparently, in the Old Testament. At least I can only read about it and try to understand it. But I don't know how you give away, even as a father, I wouldn't know how to give away the wife of one of my children. And he does. He gives it to the companion. He gives it to Samuel. He gives it to Samson's friend. Now, at the moment, Samson is angry, but he's going to get over that. And guess what? When he gets over his anger, he's going to come back to get his wife. And guess what? When he comes back to get his wife, her father has given her away to another man. Now, that would tick me off. I cannot imagine what it must have done to Samson with all of his acumen and all of his detail and all of his strength. I cannot imagine what it did to him. But you're going to see how he handles it. He doesn't handle it real well. Look at verse 3, chapter 15. Samson said concerning them, "Now shall I be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure." He went out and caught 300 foxes, took firebrands, turned tail to tail, put the firebrand in the midst between the two, and then let them set the brands on. He had set the brands on fire, and let them go into the corn of the Philistines, burn the shocks, standing corn, the vineyards, and the olives. And the Philistines said, "Who has done this?" And they answered, "Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite," because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion. And the Philistines came up and burned up the father and the wife. Now, the thing I don't understand about all of this is the death that comes. It seems like nothing can be satisfied without death. He gets riled up, he kills 1,000 people. He gets riled up, he takes 30 people and kills 30 people and gives their stuff away. That's hard for us to understand and visualize. But we need to know in the culture in which he lived, that was maybe a rather common practice. When the wife was seemingly deserted, as her father felt she was, he just miscued. So as a result, here's Samson. And now with all of this baggage already, here's Samson, the one that God has set aside. And they find out that he is the one that set fire to the fields. Now, I don't know how you tie the tails of foxes together and put fire brands between the tails and then set them off in a field. It sure would burn a field down mighty fast. And listen to the number. 300 foxes, tail to tail, running through a field on fire. Of course it's going to destroy everything in the field as it runs through. Samson said unto them, "Though you have done this, yet will I avenge you. After that I will cease." And he smote them hip and thigh, a great slaughter. And he went down and dwelt on the top of the rock of Edom. Verse 9 of chapter 15. Then the Philistines went up and pitched in Judah and spread themselves in Lehi. And the men of Judah said, "Why are you come up against us?" And they answered, "To bind Samson." Well, you need to bind Satan also. "To bind Samson are we come up, to do to him as he hath done to us." Then 3,000 men, they brought a pretty good army to take one man. 3,000 men came up to the top of the rock and said to Samson, "Knowest thou not that the Philistines are rulers over us? What is this that thou hast done unto us?" He said unto them, "As they did unto me, so I have done unto them, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth." He said unto them, "We are come down to bind thee." He said, "Okay, I'm going to let you tie me up if you make me one promise, that you will not kill me, that you will not come upon me, that you'll leave that to the Philistines." They said, "We promise we will not kill you." And so he said, okay. So they bound him up, and he came unto Lehi. Verse 14, the Philistines shouted against him, "The Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him." There's a change. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him. The Spirit of the Lord mightily. He's going to have more power than normal. And the cords that were around his arms became like flax that was burnt by fire, and his bands loosed from his hands. And he found a new jawbone, put forth his hand, took it, and killed 1,000 men therewith. And Samson said, with the jawbone of the donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of the donkey have I slain 1,000 men. It came to pass, when he had made an end to this speaking, that he cast away the jawbone out of the hand, and called the place Ramath Lehi. Now, in all of this, look at verse 20. Sums it up. He judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. Now, this is just the beginning of the story of Samson. And the story is going to be the way he judges is by the Spirit of the Lord coming upon him. So the Spirit of the Lord comes upon him. Now we'll get into the next episode, next class time, about what happens to Samson from this point forward. Up to this point, he's been victorious in everything he's done. Whatever he needed to do. If he needed to kill a lion, he ripped him like a kid. If he needed to burn down the fields, he found the foxes. I don't know how you'd find 150 foxes, but he found 300 foxes, I guess. How many did I say? 300 foxes. He found them, tied them together, burned down the fields of the Philistines. That's the kind of person he's going to be throughout his entire life. Rather unpredictable. And we'll see that in the next episode. Well, thanks for joining me today for Bible study in the book of Judges. God bless you.